Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator created many mysteries since its release back in 2017. However, one mystery that's kind of prominent to this day is the origin of the FNaF 6 building. A lot of things point towards it being an older building that was renovated by Henry decades later, and due to the evidence, many people think that the pizza place was originally Fredbear's family diner. Even I thought this at one point, and I was a massive defender of the theory. Nevertheless, after Secret Mimic released, my opinion has changed and I don't believe this anymore due to reasons that I'll say later in this video. But if it's not Fredbear's, then what was the building originally? Well, YouTuber Zedorox did a video on Fazbear's Fright being a renovated Fredbear's, which I don't really believe, but it was a good video nonetheless. However, he brought up Freddy Fazbear's Pizza being the origin of the FNaF 6 building, which did remind me of the theory. I knew what it was back in the day, but I thought it was just shit to be honest, but looking back at it, I honestly think it's the answer, and the evidence is there. Just before we begin, make sure to like the video and also consider subscribing, because as you can see from these stats, most people that watch my videos are not subscribed, so can we change that please? And in the future, if my content doesn't suit you anymore, you can always change your mind and unsubscribe. Now, let's start the video. Let's first go over and debunk most of the major evidence, or try to, for FFPS Fredbear's. One of the main evidence is that the FNaF 6 location has bright red doors that are for the entrance, which is the same as Fredbear's as seen in the FNaF 4 minigame. However, this is probably just a reused asset by Steel Wool, because literally all the doors in FNaF Screw Reach have this same door model. So it probably doesn't mean anything. Next, people use this destroyed car as evidence since there were cars outside Fredbear's in the FNaF 4 minigames, but this is just a stretch. Because like 1, why would this same car be parked here for like 40 years? And 2, I don't think it's a callback or reference as nothing really points to that and it's just speculative. I think it's just there to show how much the sinkhole affected the surrounding area. The next major evidence is the 70s Freddy cutout underneath the Pizzaplex, which you know is based on Fredbear because it's the same from the Fredbear poster one can find in Screw Reach. I mean, it's decent evidence, but it can have alternate explanations, such as being from Murray's Custom Manor, more on the manor later, or it's part of the Secret Mimic foreshadowing due to the 70s part in the name. And if you remember, like, the manor has so many cardboard cutouts of characters. This one is probably considered the best evidence for FFPS Fredbear's. On the Fredbear's Nom Nom Bits arcade machine, there is an image depicting a burning building with Spring Bonnie and Fredbear exiting the building as ghosts. Since this building could be Fredbear's, this implies it has suffered a fire in its lifetime, and considering nothing implies Fredbear went ablaze in the 80s, this would be the FNaF 6 location. However, like the 70s Freddy, this can also have different meanings such as Secret Mimic foreshadowing, as the prototype Fredbear and Spring Bonnie were a part of the fire that consumed the manor, the prototype pizzeria and the surrounding area. Or maybe Fredbear's Fright is canon, who knows? I do admit this is pretty hard to debunk, however there are heavy implications that Edwin Murray's Custom Manor is underneath the Pizzaplex, and if true, basically makes Fredbear's being a FNaF 6 location impossible, as the diner is already operational during the events of the game, as implied by the Fredbear family diner pizza boxes in the manor. And also, Fredbear's is like nowhere near the manor at all, and there being 2 Fredbear's, with the second one being built over the manor and is the one where all the shit happens, it's basically Hitchens Razor. For the evidence that the manor is underneath the Pizzaplex, there are mascot costumes from the manor underneath the Pizzaplex in that room where the Mimic is, where Cassie encounters him. Also, there are similar looking rooms as well that Cassie comes across. The hill that Freddy, Vanessa and Gregory sit on, which implies to be near the Pizzaplex, is pretty much the same one where the Mimic and David were sat on. And Roy Toast discovered that it's basically right next to Edwin's house, which is right next to the manor. There are also lights underneath the Pizzaplex, which are similar to the ones in the manor, but this could be a reused asset, but I don't know. The outside of the Pizzaplex and the manor are kind of both similar, and the differences could be attributed to how well Secret Mimic and Screw Reach is like a 50-year difference, since Screw Reach is like 2035. If you're wondering why I believe this year, I made a whole video on the topic, so link in the description for that. I know for a fact there's more evidence for the fact you've been under the Pizzaplex, and this topic is probably best for its own main video, so keep an eye out for that unless I forget. Another bit of evidence they use is that Rockstar Freddy is the mascot of the game, and he has similarities to Fredbear, which I can see, but again, there's probably nothing, and most likely a callback to Fredbear. Plus, Rockstar Freddy is literally a part of the Rockstar gang of the classics as well. If it was just him and like Rockstar Bonnie, or maybe even a Rockstar Spring Bonnie type of thing, then maybe I would understand this point more. Another minor bit of evidence they use is that it's implied the Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals bunker is underneath the Pizzaplex, and they say that this place on the breaker map is actually Fredbear's. However, this is unlikely since it's called an observation, similar to the FNaF 4 bedroom area, so it's most likely just a recreation of Fredbear's. Now, that's basically most of the evidence that isn't really stretches. Well, some of them, yes, they were, but still, they were the main evidence. Now, let's go through why the FNaF 6 location is a repurposed Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The first piece of evidence is that the FFPS location is most likely the same place where Charlie died. This is because in the Screw Puppet minigame, the alleyway where the puppet goes to Charlie's body is very similar to the FFPS location's alleyway from the rare screens. Like, just look at the garbage bins and how they are spaced out, which is the same as the minigames. I know they aren't the same bin, but I think Scott just did to show both alleyways have a connection. Originally, I did believe Charlie died at Fredbear's, but after believing this theory, I discovered something that makes Charlie die at Fredbear's kinda unlikely. Well, maybe. In the Sakura Puppet minigame, Charlie is wearing a green wristband, which is the same colour as the puppet's eyes. This probably means that the other kids that wear the blue, pink and yellow-brown wristbands use this same logic as well, and those are the same colours as the classic 4 eyes, heavily implying that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and so Charlie has to die here. There's also some minor bit of evidence like Cake Bear being referred to as Freddy, but this is also the same with Fredbear too. I know people will point out that Charlie died at Fredbear's in novels, but this can be explained. Firstly, the bite doesn't happen in novels, so Scott could have just made Charlie die there so Fredbear's a reason to close. Also, the novels aren't always one-to-one with the games. Plus, this next point is a bit speculative since the FNaF 2 movie has not been released yet, but according to the trailer, it does point towards Charlie dying at Freddy's, but apparently it's the FNaF 2 location in 1983, like bruh. Another bit of evidence is that in the Fazbear Fright story Find Player 2, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza literally gets renovated into a place called Flo's Fabulous Eatery. How is this connected to Pizzeria Simulator? Well, Flo's is in the game as one of the advertisements the player can receive, which is Flo's Glossy Floss. Fazbear Frights was stated by Scott to help solve the blanks of lore. Be patient. Let me at least say this. Future games will look forward, but look to the novels to fill in some of the blanks to the past. We know he's talking about Fazbear Fright because he literally responds to a Redditor saying this. To answer your question, yes, I'm referring to the new Fazbear Fright series. So I believe Find Player 2's connection to the Pizzeria Simulator is intentional. So it heavily implies that the pizza place is renovated Freddy's, not Circus Babies or Fredbears or whatever fucking other pizzeria there is. There is also a similar thing in the Fazbear Fright story The Scoop, where a Utah diner gets remodeled into a cinema, which can imply FFPS Fredbears, but this story was scrapped, so the Find Player 2 connection has more validity. Plus, as far as I know, a cinema doesn't really have that much connections to the FNaF 6 location, unlike Flo's. The next piece of evidence is that it's likely Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was built above Murray's Scotstoun Manor. This is because we know Freddy's was opened in 1983 and Secret Rick takes place in 1979, so a 4-year construction plan of Freddy's makes sense, and they could probably get it done in less time, to be honest. Also, underneath the manor, there's a prototype Freddy's, which, yeah, is definitely not the same Freddy's we know. But, however, it could still be there as a hint to the player that Freddy's is eventually built over, however it's a bit too speculative. The manor is basically in the middle of nowhere as well, which also matches how Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is depicted in most media. In the Fazbear Fright story The New Kid, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is literally deep in the woods, and basically in the middle of nowhere. This pizzeria is heavily implied to be the same one as the FNaF 1 location, although since Frights got debunked by Secret Rick, it's not the game's location, but still remember Scott's statement about Frights. It can still be used for supporting evidence. The week before also seems to support this as well. In the FNaF movie as well, Freddy's is in the middle of nowhere, and same with the Dead by Daylight Freddy's Pizzeria, although to be fair, most of the maps in that game are in the middle of nowhere. The only one to really stop the trend is Into the Pit, however so much stuff was changed in that game, like these two are meant to be the same pizzeria, and yes, the FNaF 1 location is the MCI location. Henry basically spells out for you in his insanity-turning speech when recalling the events of Follow Me.
He lured them all back to a familiar place, back with familiar tricks. He brought them all together.
So, Into the Pit isn't really the best evidence. So basically, after the manor burns down and eventually collapses underground due to probably the sinkhole, Freddy's is created above it and the rest is history. Going back to the insanity ending speech, it just makes the speech hit harder if the FNaF 6 location is Freddy's. Another bit of evidence is that Henry's speech implies a tragedy occurred at the Pizza Sim location. Under the Pizza Sim location being Freddy's, this does fit because the missing children incident occurred there, and also Charlie's death under this. It was also poetic as well, as Scott would be ending the Click Team era where it all began in a meta sense, the first game. And also, it's where the missing children finally move on since they are not in Freddy, and Mike is the player again, so it just adds more to the poeticness. I have no clue if that's a word. A little bit of evidence that I've just thought of while writing the script is that in the FNaF movie, Freddy's, which is reminiscent of the FNaF 1 pizzeria, is literally called Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, the same name as the FNaF 6 location, which could imply a connection. Matthew Lillard also said regarding the movies, it's important to Scott that he feels a lot of lore questions that live in his community, and keep giving the fans of the community what they want. This could imply that Scott is using the movies to help solve the blanks of the game's universe, similar to Fazbear Frights. Another point is that the FFPS location starts with an empty pizzeria, which could be related to how Phone Dude Team raided the FNaF 1 pizzeria and took all the items for Fazbear's Fright. I know there are previous managers for Mike, as implied by the guy who dies by Scrap Baby in the intro sequence, but they were probably just nothing burgers and didn't really add anything to the pizzeria. Also, wouldn't there still be items from them if they did contribute to the pizza place? You may ask why the location looks so different to the FNaF 1 location. Well, this can be explained. Firstly, Mike renovated the place in Pizzeria Simulator, so there would be obvious differences. And also, locations in FNaF are not consistent. Like, this room in the FNaF 6 location didn't exist in Screwbridge, and also, as I said earlier, just look at the Into the Pit map and FNaF 1 map. The next bit of evidence could be a bit shaky, and I don't really believe in this one that much, because as I mentioned earlier, the novels aren't really one-to-one the games, but I'll still talk about it. In a novel trilogy, Fredbears and Freddy's are in New Harmony and Hurricane respectively, which are two places in Utah. We know for a fact that Utah carries over to the games, because in FNaF 6, in the lawsuit papers, we can see Washington County, Utah on the top of the documents. New Harmony and Hurricane are located in Washington County. The pizza place is probably in Hurricane, because in Screwbridge, Monty says regarding Monty Golf that it's home to the Hurricane Hole-in-One. I know some people think that it could just be related to the natural disaster of the same name, since there is one in the golf course as well, but no, what it's most likely doing is go along and joking about the city's unusual name. So anyway, since the pizza place is in Hurricane, it gives more implication for it being a repurposed Freddy Fazbear's if Freddy's being in Hurricane, Utah does actually carry over to the games for the novels. Overall, all this is why I believe the FNaF 6 location was Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and not Fredbear's. This is probably my most controversial video yet, just because of how beloved the FNaF 6 location being Fredbear's is. I'm imagining a lot of angry comments, so feel free to write anything down you disagree with in the comment section. Just remember to be respectful though, as it's just creepy bear game lore at the end of the day. Like, maybe if Murray's Costume Manor is revealed to not be under the Pizzaplex, then yeah, I will probably go back to FFPS Fredbear's, but as of right now, I think FFPS Freddy's is more likely, but who knows. Make sure to hit the like button and also subscribe, and stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the flip side. Goodbye!